Армысыздар, құрметті көрермен, Алматы арнасының эфирінде арнайы сұхбат және біздің бүгінгі қонағымыз ақш-ның Қазақстандағы төтенше және өкілетті елшісі William Moser мырза. Mr. Moser, welcome to Almaty, and it's a great honor for me to take interview with you. Thank you for that, for this opportunity.
Well, Igarim, thank you very much, because it's a pleasure for me to have a chance to talk to you again, and also it's always wonderful when I am in Almaty. For me, after having lived here for 3 years, from 1996 to 1999, I always feel that when I come back to Almaty, I'm coming home.
So let's start our conversation with the Afghanistan situation.
Sure.
In his recent addresses, President Tokayev noted the situation in Afghanistan and its growth of overall tension globally.
Mm-hmm.
So a radical group, so now we say they took over the power in the country. And what do you think? Do you think it can be a risk not only for Central Asia, but for all the world?
Well, Igaram, I want to say that I too am very concerned about Afghanistan, and I am concerned on the situation in Afghanistan and how it affects our partners in Kazakhstan and in the other countries in Central Asia, because we care very deeply about our relationships with all of the countries in Central Asia and hope that they will continue to be secure and stable. But if I can talk a little bit about how we look at Afghanistan today, that we want, we acknowledge the Taliban's presence in Afghanistan, but we want to encourage them to take the right measures and to create an inclusive Afghanistan government that will really be to the benefit of all of Afghanistan's people. That's the reason why we worked with our partners in the United Nations to pass a Security Council resolution on August 30th that called for inclusivity in the government and for Afghanistan to no longer be a home to terrorist groups. And we feel that it's only through these kinds of measures that Afghanistan can build a stable country that will actually have a positive effect on Central Asia instead of having potentially a very, very negative effect. So we and our international partners will continue Afghanistan to take these kinds of measures, and we will continue to stay diplomatically engaged.
And do you believe that it's possible to establish this diplomatic relationships with, Taliban group, which are prohibited in many countries?
Well, I'll say this, Igaram, that, I am a professional diplomat, and I've been a diplomat over 30 years. And I am a big believer in the importance of engagement. And even though you may have disagreements with the government, it doesn't mean that you stop engaging with them. And I will say, too, it's very important to clarify that we may or may not recognize the government in Afghanistan or recognize the Taliban government. However, that doesn't mean that our diplomatic engagement stops, because what we intend to do is to continue to talk to the Taliban, particularly in Qatar, where we currently have the Afghanistan diplomatic mission. And they will talk to the Taliban who are resident there, and we will also continue to engage with them at other fora around the world. Because just because we don't recognize a government doesn't mean we're going to stop the engagement. And we are very, very dedicated to having a more positive future for the Afghanistan people. And so our engagement is very important. And I think that we can find, and I'm very hopeful that over time we will find a way to have a productive relationship with the Taliban. And really, hopefully, that will be that inclusive government that we're all hoping to create.
Can I ask about evacuating people, Afghan people? For example, now, even me, most Afghan journalists, also Afghan people, they write with a request of evacuating them. Most they want to evacuate in US or Europe, yes. What do you think about them, local people who is not, who doesn't agree with Taliban principles?
Well, this is the reason why we've said that we want to continue engaging with the Taliban, because we do want to see them allow for the free movement of people now that the U.S. And the NATO presence is gone out of the country. In other words, those people that feel that they cannot build a future in Afghanistan should be given the opportunity to depart. And we feel that channel is also important to maintain. And this is part of our engagement strategy with them, that we want to encourage them that these kinds of opportunities will still be present. Now, I was very encouraged today that the airport opened again for commercial airlines. And that's a good sign, because if it opened this soon for commercial air traffic, it means that there is a desire on part of the government to really to still maintain those contacts with the outside world. And we want them to have a normal relationship with their people, where their people will have the opportunities to come and go.
Is the U.S. ready to open the door to Afghan people?
Well, that is all of the entry of the Afghanis to the United States has to be contingent upon what's allowed by U.S. law. Now, we have allowed into the United States tens of thousands of Afghans who worked for us during the period of the 20 years that we were in Afghanistan. And they are the ones that qualify for what we call a special immigrant visa. And in fact, thousands of them are already in the United States. Now, and some of them are in third countries waiting their visas to be processed. And those we know have a claim. Now, there are other groups that have the possibility of obtaining refugee status, but they have to qualify under U.S. law for that status. And that is a very complicated process to explain in an interview. But there are categories where they do allow entry into the United States, but they all have to meet with the criteria set by U.S. law.
I know that it was very difficult also for American people who lived in Afghanistan for about 20 years, yeah, who was close to Afghan people also when they were in Afghanistan. So could you tell more about it? So it was difficult for even American people to go back to U.S. because of this close relationship with local people.
Well, and that's true, because we do have Americans who develop close relationship with the Afghan people over the years. And there's many stories in the press about what the reactions of those people are as they've returned to the United States. But I really think it's worth saying this, that after 20 years, President Biden was very clear that we had achieved our goals in Afghanistan. We went there in order to eliminate the threat of terrorism from Al-Qaeda. And once Osama bin Laden was killed, then our reason for being in Afghanistan, really the original reason, was no longer there. So it was really past time to end the presence of U.S. troops there, and really let the Afghan people determine their own fate. So even though I'm sympathetic to the views of Americans who are very emotionally attached to Afghanistan, at the same time, I think there's a realization that the United States must consider its strategic objectives. And if our strategic objective in the country was accomplished, then there was really no more justification for keeping U.S. troops there.
Okay. In 2011. No, not 2011.
2001?
Yes.
Yes.
I was a student of first course, and we all remember the situation in September 11th. So in New York. So now we see that, as you mentioned now, that U.S. achieved its goal. So, but most even American political people, so they say it's that NATO. It was a fail of NATO's position. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that's a misinterpretation of what our real strategic objectives were, because we never said that we were, the United States really didn't have as a clear strategic objective to really remake Afghanistan, and I think that was unrealistic. What we want to make sure, and we still want to make sure today, is that Afghanistan can no longer be a home for terrorists. And we don't want to see, and we don't want to see the gains that the Afghan people have made in the last 20 years actually be lost. And that's the reason why we want to continue the diplomatic engagement. But at the end of the day, President Biden made a very hard, cold analysis of what our true strategic objectives were in Afghanistan. And his conclusion is one that I think clear-eyed said, we accomplished what we needed to accomplish, and now it's time for the Afghanistan people to do what they need to do in order to build the society that they want. I have, I know the future, it's hard to see into the future right now, and no one has a crystal ball. But I will say that the Afghan people are not the same people that were in Afghanistan 20 years ago. In fact, they have a very young population who don't remember who the Taliban were 20 years ago. And so I think that it's going to be a new situation and in a much more connected world. When you were a student 20 years ago, I bet you you might have had some internet, but very, very poor internet. And I remember when I left Kazakhstan in 1999, I had the fastest internet line in the country, or one of the fastest, because I had one of a specially dedicated phone line that was wonderful for the time. But it wasn't the information superhighway that many of us have access to now. And even Afghans have access to that. And I think it changes how the people of Afghanistan will look upon their future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.